So we got a guest.
Yes.
An exciting guest on the line for us. His name is Joel Gonzalez. He's a producer of a documentary called Firewatch, which is basically the story of burn pits. And if you're not familiar with burn pits, well, you should be. But if you're not familiar with it, burn pits are where they were burning the trash, especially in the Iraq and Afghanistan conflict. Mm-hmm. And when they burn trash, there's things in that trash they burn that we really shouldn't be smelling. And you've heard the stories. I've heard the stories of how these burn pits were placed in places where where you're breathing that in every day. Yeah. So Joel, are you there on the line?
I'm here. Thank you for having me on, guys.
All right. Well, tell us about yourself and tell us about this project that you've just finished.
It is a documentary, just as JJ mentioned, that really it's like the true story behind the PACT Act and the advocacy group that started it, which is Burn Pits 360, that was started by Rosie Torres and Leroy Torres, just after Leroy got back after serving a tour in Iraq. He was a Texas state trooper, and he started to show signs of just getting sick and getting ill, and eventually was kind of forced out of his position there as a Texas state trooper. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that story. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, the way I tell the story is that, Rosie, 5'2", Latina housewife says, no, I'm not going to accept that. And I want to find out what's going on. So she goes down the rabbit hole of finding out that hundreds of thousands of soldiers are returning home, and ultimately, within short few years are getting sick and dying. They form a Burn Pits 360 with the help of other advocates, like Joe Wilkinson, and ultimately, lead the charge on this, that for 14 years of their lives, have really led the charge, alongside of Susan Zaire, Danielle Robinson, who's the Bill's namesake, the widow of Keith Robinson. And so it's a really great, inspirational, powerful story of resilience, of taking their grief, and just, seeking justice and then just, leading with love. And we called it Firewatch. Originally it was called the Burn Pits. But as we were telling the story, as we were going through all the footage that the original filmmakers, Kevin Flaunlacher and Kevin Savannah Ma, were originally following them since 2018. So when the project came to me, they already had at least 4 years of footage altogether. And then with the additional footage that I came in to produce, we found that the story was just so powerful that we had to kind of cut it up into 3 episodes. So that's where we are now. And we called it Firewatch again, the military term for, standing watch through the night. And it was a fitting metaphor for the story. And we're complete. The film, the 3 episodes are complete. We are looking at combining it into a 110-minute, 120-minute standalone film. And we're excited, but we're just at the stage right now where we're like most filmmakers get to the stage of legal review and rights and clearances and fair use clearances and things like that. So that's kind of where we're at now. And we're just looking, we launched a campaign, on Veterans Day through December 2nd. And, we're looking to raise the funding we need to get our clearances in order so that we could roll the film out properly.
Well, what's your story? What got you involved in this project?
My story, I'm a filmmaker. I've made about 24 films in my career, everything from a small independent horror film to some mid-level projects as well. I did The Long Game that premiered at South by Southwest in 2023, winning the Audience Choice Award. Was number 1 on Netflix in last year, 2024. And but I'm a storyteller. I love telling. I love developing stuff. I love telling stories. The project came to me when I was at a company as a production executive there, kind of looking through and helping them run their productions. And as I mentioned, the 2 original filmmakers, Kevin and Savannah, had brought the film there, or brought their footage there, in trying to figure out if there was a way that this company can participate or support them. I advocated for the film, and ultimately it didn't stay there. I had left after my contract was up, and that's when I started my company, Untold Content Group. And they sought me out about a year later, about almost close to a year later, and they still hadn't really done much in the terms of really getting the film put together. And that's kind of when I just came on board as a producer, and then and started leading the project. But my background is I'm born and raised in Southern California, and father of four. And I just love filmmaking. That's my passion. It's just telling stories that's why I call my company Untold Content.
But this is a powerful story that, to be frank, most Americans really don't know anything about. And I'm sure that's part of the challenge in making this is how do you introduce a very kind of a complex topic that if you haven't served, you don't really understand. And how do you make it in a format that hopefully most Americans can see and say, you know what, this is a story that needs to be told.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point, and I'll be honest with you, even the challenge we have with the small campaign we're running now, we're telling people we have a documentary. Everybody knows veterans, right? Everybody knows soldiers. Everybody says, thank you for your service.
Yes.
But when it comes down to it, and to be honest with you, when the film was first brought to me, there at the company, the thing that drew me in first and foremost was that the information that I was hearing that these soldiers were coming home sick and dying, and ultimately not getting the benefits or qualifying for the benefits or being denied the benefits that they so rightfully so deserved. That's really what caught my attention. So, and a lot of us, I wrote an op-ed here for our local paper here for Veterans Day, where I talk about that, thank you for your service. Although they are very genuine words from most, and I would believe from most of everybody that says them, the weight behind those words have more meaning, So the way that I've been approaching it is just really explaining to people that, that there's the ads that we see on television for joining the military, go strong Army, strong Marines and Air Force and all of that. But what I tell people is if they were to show what happens for not for the most part, but for a large majority of veterans that have to, really advocate for services that they're entitled to. We wouldn't have an army where a volunteer army. We just wouldn't have it.
Right.
So it's a balance of that, and I don't pretend to be the expert by all means in the ins and outs of everything, but right is right, and wrong is wrong. And I just think that when a young man or woman, sign on that dotted line, they are writing a blank check. That's actually a quote that we straight from Rosie Torres himself. And he's like, we were writing a blank check, and we should be taken care of for that afterwards. So you are correct. Like, not a lot of people understand the ins and outs of how the military work, but I think we all understand the importance of veterans, right? They're not a partisan issue. They're a partisan topic, right? They're an American promise. And I think for me, this documentary, yes, it talks about the toxic exposure to burn pits, Iraq and Afghanistan, but it also, I hope for it to be a spark for continued conversation and an accountability for the negligence that happened, and it's still happening because, as you guys know, we have Fort Lejeune, we have Red Hill, and countless other kind of things that are happening that kind of just go under the radar, and unless somebody makes noise about it. So, as I said to Rosie and to Leroy and to the rest of the team, as well as JJ, that I want the film to serve as an advocacy piece for groups like Burn Pit 360, so that they can continue the conversation and keep pointing out the negligence that is happening.
And that's one thing we were talking about, Joel. This is JJ. And I was talking to Jerry about this. And it's especially important in our climate right now, where there may be a narrative where veterans are taking advantage of benefits or that they don't deserve them. It's very important to get this film out there so that we understand the effects of burn pits, not only for new age veterans, right? Iraq, Afghanistan, but it also affects the Vietnam era veterans, right? There's a lot of Vietnam veterans that, are now eligible for benefits because of this PACT Act, right? Those that were stationed in Thailand, Guam, American Samoa, Johnston Atoll. So there's a lot that comes within this PACT Act that affects all of us. And there may be even a narrative that they may want to take away the PACT Act, right? There's been that talk
we're
too.
$40 trillion in debt and we can't afford it anymore and all those stuff that we hear.
And we can't have that, Jerry.
We can't have that. And that's why this movie, this documentary is so important. And Joel, if you can stay with us past the break, I want to talk to you about how you actually made it and some of the...
Sure.
And just because there's a fascinating story that I want to get into you about. So if you don't mind hanging on with us after the break, we got a few more questions for you. So we're going to take a short break for the Veterans Radio Roundtable. We'll be right back with Joel Gonzalez, the producer of Firewatch, the story of the Burn Pit 360. Sorry about that. Welcome back to the Veterans Radio Roundtable. Hey, Joel Gonzalez is with us. He's a producer of a documentary called Firewatch, which I love the name. I love where the emphasis behind it, because every person in the military, you say, hey, go stand Firewatch, for going, okay, no sleep for me tonight. But, I mean, it's an important job. So, Joel, are you still there?
I'm still here, guys.
All right. So, we do want to let you know that this documentary we're talking about, we're going to be showing it here at the Veterans Roundtable next time on Thursday, 10 o'clock.
Yep.
So what you're hearing us talk about, you have a chance to actually see a 20-minute preview of it, because it's not ready for like full release, correct?
Right.
So
but we're going to show
it's ready
it.
for full release. It's just we're just trying to get the legal review.
Right.
You guys
So,
are going to be watching a 20-minute a selection of 3 very powerful interviews with our introduction of episode 1. Yes.
And Joel, you know, I saw this preview at the gala in Austin, with the Merpers 360 gala, and I'll tell you, I'm an Iraq veteran. I'm a combat Marine in Iraq, and I was exposed to these burn pits. But you know, the rawness, the feeling that this film gives off, I feel like veterans need to experience it. They need to see it firsthand, because yeah, we can talk about burn pits, but do you really understand what it did to us? You know, it's our Agent Orange, essentially.
And Joel, how do you as a producer filmmaker, how do you make that? That's what I was going to ask you. How do you actually put that into a documentary like this? What's the process behind that?
If I understand the question, like how do we
the emotional? How do you incorporate the emotional part of it and not? Yeah. It still tell the story, and how does I know that's a powerful tool you have with this.
You know, and thank you for that. Thank you for that question. And JJ, yeah, a lot of people that watched it there at the Gala of Valor, you know, was the first time, and I have to just share that it was the first time that we actually got to see it outside of our own circle. You know, if you're working for something, at that point we had been, you know, in the editing bay literally for 2 years. You know, cutting the footage down, going through, you know, shooting additional interviews, you know, with John Stewart, John Field, other individuals. And to see it at that form, you know, and at that point, you know, it's color corrected, it's sound mixed and everything. I'm like, okay, we're going to put this out there. And to see the reaction and the ovations and the applause and the tears, you know, it wasn't a sense of like, oh, I made them cry. It was a sense of like, okay, this has meaning. This is landing the way it needs to land. And the way that we came about that is, you know, I'll be honest with you. I mean, we had I'd have to say over close to maybe 600 hours of footage that had to be gone through by our director, editor, Hector Felix, and co-director Kevin. You know, and what we found was, and one thing I kept telling them, you know, it's a massive amount of footage, you know, and my mom used to always say, you know, when you need a big piece of steak, you know, how she would cut it up for you, you know, and then just eat it in pieces, right? We said, look, let's just cut it up, and let's cut it up into a multi-episodic. But what was our driving force was, let's just tell the humanistic story, the story of Rosie, the story of Leroy, the story of Susan, the story of Danielle, John, how they came into the picture, and the other advocates like Tim Jensen, you know, from Grunstyle, how he came in and he was a big advocate for it. And we found that, and one of the sayings that I've always heard was, you tell the story of a desert through a grain of sand, right? Through one grain of sand, you understand the entire desert. So that's what we stuck to. It's like, what were the human emotional moments here, the stories of resilience, the stories of almost suicidal feelings that Leroy went through, where Rosie tells a story about how she had to battle with Leroy because of these cluster headaches he was suffering from, how she had to battle, you know, and if you know Rosie Torres, she's not very tall, you know, and she's wrestling this rifle out of his mouth, you know, and their dog, you know, and his service dog Hope jumps in and actually rips like Leroy's pants and knocks him down. Those are the things that I think universally, you know, if you have served, or, you know, whether it be Vietnam or Korea, the Korean War, or these conflicts, it's a lot of soldiers come back with that, you know, PTSD or other elements that just they can't take it, right? So for us, it was just we have to strike on those chords, and I mean that from a creative point of view, meaning that's how you have the audience engage with it, whether you served or not. You understand what it is to feel down. You understand what it is to feel, you know, that what do they say, the cards are stacked against you. So that's really what our focus was. And I think once that Hector and Kevin got into it and really found their groove, they were really able to pull that story information out and really kind of deliver that message that we were going for.
And Joel, you know, I want to be honest with you, and I want to be honest with the audience. This film is going to be raw. It's going to be raw. It's going to hit you, but you need to experience it, and they need to understand what came with all this, right? And so I think y'all did very well in doing this. And I know we talked about this, Joel, offline. You know, do we want the raw one, or we don't? No, we want the raw one. We want the veterans to understand exactly what that spouse felt, or what that veteran went through, what Leroy and Rosie went through. I mean, we want it in its rawest form so that they understand it, so that they feel it, and they can, you know, share share this with anyone that they possibly can, because we need to get the word out. If it's going to affect benefits, you know, we need to get ahead of it way in advance.
The danger is the complacency here, because the PACT Act, for the most part, was a victory. Rosie and Leroy won. The service members who suffered burn pits, we've won. We have help now, but it can be taken away. And we feel like in this climate right now, something that we worked so hard for, if you don't keep protecting it and emphasizing its value, some lawmaker who doesn't know any better, who wants to make a name for themselves, can say, well, the vets don't deserve it anymore, and get rid of it. That's why we need what you've done is so terribly important, and why the timing of it actually is really important.
Yeah, and it's happening now. I mean, it's happening now. I can't share much more information than that, but I've been privy to some information through Rosie and the advocacy work that they're doing, that they are looking at certain aspects of the bill and trying to remove certain things, and certain qualifications, and certain types of cancer that are being kind of discussed about, you know, well, this doesn't qualify anymore. So, you know, it's almost like, you know, when you win a battle, but it was a battle that you shouldn't have had to fight in the first place. Yeah. So really, you're just at the starting point. That's what I think. And I think that's what the PACT Act passing in 2022, I mean, years of service by Burn Pit 360, by Rosie, by Leroy, by all the advocates that pushed it there. But at that point, like you said, it's just the beginning. And to hear, you know, what the advocacy work, the continued work to make sure that veterans know that they qualify, or to find out if they qualify, to get on the registry, you know, to make sure that the education is out there on this, on what they're entitled to. That is still ongoing work, and that's why for us, you know, as a producer of this film, along with my other producers, we've said that this for us at this point, this film is to serve the advocacy, you know, and the advocacy will amplify the film, you know, and our goal, and I just want to mention of that, is through the traditional Hollywood system, I know that I've already have a challenge ahead of me, because I've already had preliminary talks. You know, everybody says, oh, this should be on Netflix.
Yeah,
this should be on this and that.
I was going to ask you, my very next question is how do you get the word out? How do you spread this, the message of this film out? I know you can't say too much about it, but is that a struggle that you're fighting right now?
Yeah, it is a struggle we're fighting right now. I'd be happy to tell you about that part, because it's you know, I'm talking to executives, you know, at those different streamers, you know, and for them it's well, what's the scandal? They want celebrity scandal. They want IP. They when it comes to a documentary like this, there are very little places that we can take it that have the power or the means to release it widely, you know. So we haven't had the best conversations, but again, if we continue to have the support of the veterans community, like your group and other groups throughout the country, then there is no need for that. Whether we get into South by Southwest or Tribeca, because these are the two festivals that we submitted to episode 1 to, whether we get into those or not, my goal, and again, you know, and I put this in God's hands, is that we're able to roll this film out independently, you know, with some small sponsorships, and get this city to city, and just have, you know, 4-wallet, as they call it, where we're booking out the theaters ourselves, we're pre-selling tickets, and then we're taking it to every city you know, where the majority of these veterans, whether they were exposed to burn pits or not, whether you know, but they understand the importance of serving military service, that we get the film in those markets. And from there, we make the noise, right? And then when you make the noise, Hollywood always comes knocking, guys. That's just the plain old truth. So that's our goal, you know, unless something changes where someone steps up. But I've had meetings with individuals that their faces are just glossed over when I'm talking to them about the burn pits or 9/11 and toxic exposure, and I'm shocked at the lack of empathy.
Yes. Yeah. And thank you for that, Joel. I just want to push this before we go on the break. But so we're going to be showing it here at the Veterans Roundtable, the meeting at Del Mar Center for Economic Development. And again, Joel, we're the third in the nation, right, to be able to see this, right? The third venue, in a sense, that's going to be able to see the Firewatch preview documentary. Yes. So it's something very special, and I want to thank you, Joel, for being on board, for bringing this on, and of course, Rosie and Leroy. But again, folks, We're going to meet at the Veterans Roundtable, Del Mar Center for Economic Development, room 106, this upcoming Thursday, November the 20th. And we're going to show this at about 10 o'clock. And we're going to provide snacks and drinks right then, and we're working on that. So we're going to meet there. Again, thank you, Joel, for everything. You want to say anything?
Yeah, Joel, thank you very much for your time. You're a producer of the documentary Firewatch. It's an in-depth look at the struggle for burn pits 360. And we're looking forward to the 20 minutes we're going to see your video here on Thursday. Again, Joel, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. God bless you both.
Have a good one, brother. Thank you.
All right, that was good. Sorry, I got to recover from that.
Yeah.
Just the thought of all the things. So we got a few seconds left.